world has 800 million cars. Thanks to the rise of China and India, we're pushing towards 1 billion cars. For the 20th century, we saw the positives of mobility. Now in the 21st century, we have to deal with the legacy problems of environmental issues like local pollution, global warming. We have to look at the consequences of where the energy comes for cars. Almost all of it comes from petroleum now, and that has geopolitical consequences and ultimately economic consequences. The price at the pump and the volatility of energy markets could be disruptive to the entire global economy.
Een derde van alle olie die we gebruiken gaat in ons vervoer. Kan dat niet veel minder? Het zou een boel problemen oplossen. En dan hebben we het nog niet eens over de prijs.
The price of gas is hurting just about everybody. Yeah, I mean, we've heard rumors that it's going up even more, possibly $5 a gallon.
This is a 2007 Ford Mustang. It's convertible. It's a V6. The price on this brand new one will cost you about $30,000 plus. Right now, with our used cars, we're asking about $20,995. And it's a convertible, summertime. We do have great weather in California.
Even though it's popular to demonize the car as a source of environmental, economic, and geopolitical problems, in fact, oil is the problem. I'm Vijay Vaitheeswaran. I'm a correspondent at The Economist and co-author of Zoom, the global race to fuel the car of the future. It's a nasty, unhealthful, geopolitically complicated fuel. If we move our cars and buses and trucks beyond petroleum to another fuel, then we can actually have many of the good things like mobility that cars provide with very few of those harmful effects that petroleum leads to.
This is the Opel P1 Experimental Car. Much like it was in its day when it was used, it still has the same paintwork, still the same applique stickers on it. It's very, very original. I bought it because I think it's a milestone, and I think it represents kind of where the world has been and where the world is going. Hi, I'm Evan Mcmullen. I'm the manager of Cosmopolitan Motors in Seattle, Washington. We specialize in automobiles of historical importance. On the test track in 1973, it came in at 376 miles per gallon. I kind of questioned it. I thought, is this really the case? Is this really something that is true? And I did a little research on it, and certainly it was documented very, very well as being the car that did achieve that. And then the more I looked at it, the more I thought, this car isn't even that special. And this was owned by Shell Oil Company, and it was a series of engineers who had done the work on it as part of a competition between themselves, and this was the one that finished the best. It is out of gear now, but it's still pretty dead.
Any gas in the tube up there?
Well, that's enough gas to drive it 10 miles.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was very representative of ingenuity at the time, and a little bit disappointing when you consider that the OPEC crisis initially happened in 1973, really when this car was being formulated by these engineers, and here it is another 15 years later, or excuse me, 25 years later, and we've still not been able to, 35 years later, come up with anything any better. You go back to Henry Ford's original creation, and it got 20 miles to the gallon easily. Here we are in 2008, and we're not able to achieve an average of 30 miles to the gallon in the United States. Certainly worldwide, it's maybe that, but not a lot better. Here's a car that got 10 times that much in someone's spare time in their garage. Why is it so impossible for us to achieve something like that today? It's a 1959 Opel Caravan. station wagon that's been modified into kind of a pickup look that started off just as a conventional passenger car, a modified drive system and a heating system to vaporize the fuel, ultra insulated and made quite lightweight, but still weighing in at 2,500 pounds.
2,500 pounds?
Yeah.
Which is not very light for a...
It's not light at all, yeah. The creator of this car is very quick to discount its performance as being isolated for a track and not being something that can be done on an everyday basis. But I still think there's many things that can be learned from this car, even if there are only a few things that you can apply to a current modern car with all the conveniences that you would want. But what it does have is the ability to get tenfold the mileage that we're normally getting now. So certainly we could expect to achieve 100 miles per gallon, I would think. So the first thought that most people have is this really can't be true. And the next thought is sometimes a little bit of anger, that they're frustrated that there hasn't been more done from industry and from government to try to enforce this kind of research.
We have long had the technology to make vehicles that are more fuel efficient. We've even had the technology to make vehicles that use other fuels than petroleum. For example, if you go back to Henry Ford's Model T car, it ran beautifully on corn ethanol or on gasoline. If you looked in the streets of San Francisco in 1906, there were more electric cars on the road than there were gasoline cars. But why did gasoline come to dominate? Part of it was this intelligence and business acumen of the companies. Rockefeller was a ruthless entrepreneur. He was a very good businessman. That helped. But there was something else. I think socially, culturally, politically, we became quite addicted to a fuel that helped us get to where we wanted to go. During the Great Fire of San Francisco in 1906 that burned down the city, the fire engines that came and rescued many people were not the electric ones, they were the gasoline-powered ones. And so the reputation spread. There was a great car race in the same part of the century between electric cars and gasoline cars. And the electric car moved so slowly, people in the audience were shouting, "Get a horse! Get a horse!" These are the cultural contexts within which a fuel like gasoline and diesel, these petroleum fuels, took off.
Logisch dus dat we met z'n allen op benzine zijn gaan rijden. Maar de sterk gestegen brandstofprijzen en alle overige nadelen van olie hebben de wereld inmiddels veranderd. Op het platteland van Illinois, waar ze meer dan waar ook afhankelijk zijn van de auto, heeft een groep mannen besloten niet langer te wachten totdat superzuinige auto's op grote schaal geproduceerd worden. Ze bouwen zelf aan een auto van de toekomst. Stukken zuiniger en voorbereid op andere brandstoffen dan olie.
My name is Kevin Smith, and I'm team captain for the project.
My name's Steve Becker.
I'm Joshua Spradlin.
My name is Thomas Pasco.
Nathan Knappenberger.
And I am helping my friend Kevin build the 100 mile per gallon plus car.
We couldn't get food to the cities, period. If gas became non-existent tomorrow, if we woke up tomorrow and we didn't have any gas, if we didn't have enough in our cars, if these guys didn't have enough in their cars to get home, they'd be living here. That'd be it. They'd either walk home or be stuck here. And the people in the town, the cities that couldn't get food, they would starve.
The problem is that we're in a state of denial. Most people are in a state of denial. It's like, and you ask, how would we be if we ran out of gas? How would we be if we came down with cancer? The thing is it possible? Sure, statistically speaking, one of us here will get it, okay? Which one? Well, you know, we don't really want to think about it. We'll think about it
When it happens.
when it happens.
If we're not smart enough to solve our problems now when we can see them coming, okay? If we can't plug the dam when we see the leak, I don't think we're intelligent enough combined to solve the problem. So what we have to do is there are some of us out there working to plug this leak like we are right here. We see it coming, we're doing our best. We're trying to do more than put some duct tape on it to hold us over till tomorrow, which seems to be the motif of a lot of the companies. If we just put some duct tape on this, it'll take care of us till the next model comes out. No. We need to rebuild that dam, or at least put another wall in front of it so when it goes, we got something to stop it. We need that backup. We don't just need the plans on paper, we need the working vehicle. We need it now.
There is no technology or fuel that is big enough, good enough, and cheap enough to defeat oil by itself. Doesn't exist. There's no silver bullet. In fact, gasoline is really good at what it does. The old joke in the industry is the best substitute for gasoline is gasoline. The infrastructure is ubiquitous, it's paid for, so it's cheap. The oil companies are very powerful, and we all know how to use it. And it's very, very good at what it does. It's a very energy-dense fuel. Those things aren't all true about any alternative. With every other alternative, you have a chicken and egg problem of infrastructure. You know, if I have a fuel cell car, where do I get my hydrogen? Do I invest in a hydrogen pump when there are no fuel cell cars? You can imagine similar problems with every other kind. Electric cars, you can't recharge in 5 minutes. It takes you hours. That's very inconvenient. And so like this, you have problems with every one of the alternatives. That's why I say, if we can move to a world of flexible fuels and the electrification of the car, the body of the car becoming smarter, more software, more battery technology, more command and control systems, that means you can have multiple fuels. You can switch between your primary alternative fuel, electricity, let's say, and a backup fuel of gasoline when you need it in an emergency. I think that way we have a portfolio approach. We don't have to wait for perfection in hydrogen or biofuels or electricity in order to start solving the problem today.
We're not reinventing the wheel. We don't have the money to do that. So what we're doing is we're taking parts off of existing vehicles. We've got all the knowledge on the current automobiles. We have knowledge on how to build hybrid vehicles. We have the knowledge how to do the power electronics, how to design it, and we've got the manpower to put it together.
What if they donate these wheels?
Yeah, nice wheels, but we could only use them on the prototype one.
We're not going into this for money. We're not going in it to get rich. Something should be done, and why not just be regular guys that do it?
We're not doing anything that society's not capable of doing. It's just a matter of putting it together and getting it out there to the public so they can go, yeah, this is it. We're trying to build as much flexibility into our vehicle as we can. We're doing that not only with the suspension and drivetrain, also we can use diesel, gasoline, ethanol, methanol, a variety of different fuels. We don't know what the future fuel is going to be. Right now it's predominantly gasoline. Gasoline and diesel are easy to use and easy to get right now. But in the future it looks like it's going to swing more towards ethanol, biodiesels, other biofuels, renewable fuels and sources to use.
If we can show people that we can actually do something like this, kind of homegrown, industry, that's kind of what made America what it is.
Success.
Thomas, you just lost your seat, though.
I mean, this country was built by people working out of garages. Just regular people saying, here's a need, and nobody's doing anything about it, so I'm just gonna do it. I'm not gonna wait for it to be done for me. I'm gonna roll up my sleeves, get dirty, and see what happens.
Historically, the car companies have hated efforts to regulate fuel economy for cars, simply because they didn't want to. They said this is something that is going to hurt our profits. We would rather innovate in making bigger cars or more DVD players or fancier features rather than invest in fuel economy and making the cars lighter and smarter and stronger in a way that's compatible with environmental goals, because they simply didn't like them. They thought it would be less profitable.
For the foreseeable future, We think that the conventional propulsion system will be the dominant source of propulsion for the vehicles. So read this as in the next 25 years, this will be the major element to propel the system, and it might reach beyond this. My name is Uwe Grebe, and I'm responsible for the global advanced engineering in General Motors powertrain. We are already rolling out hybrid vehicles in North America, which is the first step in an electrification. It uses a combustion engine in combination with an electric motor. Beyond the hybrid system, electric drive, where the propulsion is electric, and where we use a propulsion system with a range extender, is the next step in the electrification.
And can you explain what that is, a range extender?
A range extender means that we drive a vehicle out of a battery with an electric motor. Whenever the battery is depleted, the customer still has range because we use a combustion engine together with a generator or a fuel cell to increase the range to deliver electricity through a propulsion system that is a motor generator. The next parallel step to this is a fuel cell electric vehicle, where the fuel cell uses hydrogen to convert the hydrogen into electricity and an electric motor to drive the vehicle.
Something brand new like this will cost you about $45,000 right now. But right now it's 35.
35,000.
35,000 with 6,500, or some of them are low miles, high miles, depends on the miles. But a very beautiful car. They got the lifetime engine warranty, factory warranty, transmission, and it's good work. You buy it, you make money on it, you have to put it on work. It's a very beautiful car, and it's a work truck. It takes a lot of gas, but from 13 to probably 16 miles per gallon. It's Ford. Ford make the best, always.
The United States has had a number of efforts to make more fuel-efficient vehicles. The problem is Detroit has never believed in them. They've always seen them as a distraction or something to do for marketing purposes or to keep the politicians happy, while they actually made their real money doing pickup trucks or SUVs or other vehicles with a huge profit margin. For example, Al Gore, when he was vice president, led a project called the PNGV, Partnership for a New Generation of Vehicles.
President Clinton has talked about a new partnership between government and the automobile industry.
It was called the Supercar Project.
General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, and your national government have agreed to accept a set of ambitious research and development goals for automobiles.
The idea was to make an American vehicle that would be the equivalent of something like a hybrid car.
Our long-term goal is to develop affordable, attractive cars that are up to 3 times more fuel efficient than today's cars. 3 times.
Detroit hated this project. They didn't want to have anything to do with it. They didn't like Al Gore. They didn't like the environmental issues. And oil prices were low and stable in the 90s. They said, what's the problem? But they said, we're being forced to do this. We're going to demand, first of all, no Japanese companies. Secondly, we'll be involved, but you have to pay, meaning the taxpayers. And thirdly, you can't force us to build a single car. We'll do the research, but we don't make any promises about building anything. What happened? The entire Clinton administration came and went. Detroit took $1.5 billion of taxpayer money. They didn't build a single car. In the meantime, the Japanese got so scared about Al Gore and the supercar project that without government subsidy, the leadership of Toyota and Honda locked their best engineers in a room and said, those Americans are up to something. Please innovate, come up with something that can be much more efficient. And they came up with the Toyota Prius. It's an extraordinary story of unintended consequences and how Detroit and Al Gore unintentionally helped the Japanese come to market with the Prius.
I used to work for General Motors from 1989 to 1993 would be the years. And one of the projects that I was involved with at that time was their electric car, which originally had the name Impact, and they changed the name to EV1.
The EV1 is an example of how Detroit has enormous innovative capacity. The EV1 was an electric car. It was an excellent electric car that some people argue is the most aerodynamic production car ever made.
But GM apparently made a corporate decision that that wasn't the kind of thing that they wanted to do.
It might have made more of a success, had General Motors really tried to support it, but they didn't.
I was devastated. I worked for the company for only a couple of years at the time that happened. And when I heard that that program was done, actually, they didn't even announce it initially as the end of the program. They just said, your job here is finished, and basically laid me off.
Even though there was a dedicated team of excellent engineers that came up with this technology, the leadership was very short-term oriented. They were pandering at GM to the shareholders and the quarterly returns, and also their engineering base, which has spent 100 years working on the gasoline internal combustion engine car, was very suspicious about this new technology, which they saw as an environmental niche. And so you had a cultural problem.
They just viewed it as too radical a change to be able to willingly embrace it, and they decided it was easier to just make it go away and hope that the rest of the industry would also do the same. One of the other things I did while I worked there was I figured out a way to make cars at least a little bit more efficient. And I showed my supervisor an idea that I'd come up with, and he said, hey, that might be interesting. Let's show that to our patent person. And it turns out it's good for about a 4 or maybe 5% gain in fuel economy. And they said, this is interesting, and they actually sent it off to Washington to apply for a patent on it. Now, it turns out there was a patent already granted, and a copy of it was mailed to me so that I could look at it. And I was just about to throw that in the drawer and sort of shrug, throw my arms up in the air and wonder why it wasn't on cars. And I noticed the assignee on the patent, which is basically the person that bought the rights for it, was none other than an oil company.
Oliemaatschappijen vragen patent aan op energiebesparende technieken. Maar daar zien we niks van terug. Autofabrikanten incasseren miljarden aan belastinggeld. Maar ze bouwden geen zuinigere auto's mee. En ondertussen blijven de prijzen voor benzine, olie en gas onrustbarend stijgen.
The ties between the oil and the car industries go very deep. Now, it's at a simple level. You can't run 96% of the cars or buses without either gasoline or diesel, right? It's physically very connected. But their political ties are more complicated. Often, they will lobby in places like Washington for policies that help both industries, or in California, or in Brussels. But at times, they'll appear to be enemies. One will say, when California tried to raise fuel economy standards or environmental standards, the oil industry said, that's a problem for the car industry. Look to them. They need better catalytic converters or onboard diagnostics. The car industry said, it's not our fault you have pollution. We need clean fuels. Go to the oil industry, get low sulfur fuel. And so each one says, he said, she said. In fact, we need to understand their interests are very closely aligned. And only when we see them together, then we can see what's actually happening and how they're able to play the political process and our cultural norms to their advantage.
What you have here is the brand new 2008 Jeep Rubicon, the ultimate off-road vehicle in the Jeep lineup. Comes complete with the off-road tires, the MyGig real-time traffic update, navigation. You have the 3-piece dual-top hardtop. You also have the Dana 44 axle, the rear differential locking axle, and the disconnecting front axle. So you can go over all the trails. Anybody that likes to do the off-road course and everything, the Jeep Rubicon is definitely the vehicle to have. Fuel consumption on the Jeep Rubicon is 15-19, depending on your driving habits. You can get a little bit more, get a little bit less. but it's the perfect off-road vehicle.
The car industry has a very, very strong lobby here in Brussels. If you just count the lobbyists that the car industry has employed here, they're around 80. And that's against, let's say, 2 people from our organization who work on the car industry. So that's about the scale that you have to think of. The issue of car fuel efficiency first started playing a role in European politics in the early 90s. And then back in 1994, Germany made a bold move in the Council of Ministers. They said that by 2005, the average car to be sold in Europe should use 5 liters per 100 kilometers, should run 1 in 20. This German proposal was never taken up, it was never translated into a legislation under heavy, heavy pressure by the car industry. They said legislation is not needed, legislation will create competitive distortions, and regulation will be very, very costly for us, and it will be, bad for your employment situation in your countries. But we'll promise you that we will make our cars a quarter more efficient, not by 2005, but by 2008. Now, we're now 2008, and that hasn't happened either. Europe is now discussing, quite frantically, I must say, a new regulation for fuel efficiency of cars to be sold in Europe. Now we are talking about 1 liter in 16, 17 kilometers in 2012. And even that is incredibly aggressively attacked by the car industry as being not feasible, that they have to close down all sorts of production lines, that it comes way too quickly, it's unexpected, it's unfair, it's too costly, and that they can't cope. So they want postponement to 2015, and they want more relaxed targets, for example, not 1 in 16 or 17, but 1 in 14, 15, for example. And that would be exactly business as usual. But we're now 14 years later, 14 years lost. So, the lobbyists here in Brussels of the car industry have earned their salary, that's for sure. Dozens of lawmakers that represent constituencies with car industry. They are active, they define the shape of this regulation, and the other lawmakers who care about climate change just usually cannot weigh up to those interests, and the rest doesn't care.
The fact is that people in this country are not behind anything except themselves. Okay, at this point, everybody's more concerned about how they're going to do next week or how their gas tank is. If 1/10 of the people today that were out there complaining about the cost of gas put $1 from all their gas today into a project like this,
we'd have a 100-mile per gallon
we
car.
would have one sitting here now. The government would rather bail out an automotive manufacturer than help develop new technology.
Last time the government told them they had to do it, they just went out and did it. If they didn't do it, Toyota came in, sold us little bitty cars in the 70s. The big companies went, holy cow, what are we going to do? Someone's coming in and taking over that we didn't think could do this. Then they had to do it. It's going to be a matter of competition or someone telling them they have to do it.
Car companies over the last few decades, much of the 20th century, have not had significant competition that meant that they could milk their assets. They had heavy investments in steel plants and in steel stamping assembly lines. They had union contracts that were very onerous, very difficult to change them. And so you got into a pattern where innovation became too expensive. And so what did they do? They would make cars that were not terribly innovative, but that made them a lot of money. And that's also why it was hard for competitors to go against them. They made so much money, and it cost so much to compete against them. That world has changed.
If we put our minds to it, we can change things. And so looking at this car, the ability to get tenfold the mileage that we're normally getting now, it gives you kind of a perspective of what was in the past and hopefully a perspective of what's to come. Were I Opel, I would be very interested in the car. In fact, were I Opel, I would probably try to acquire the car. But I don't know. I think it's something that would leave to their board, but I would think that they would be extremely interested in this car. What a wonderful marketing piece it would be for them. Are they particularly energy conscious and energy minded? I'm not sure.
Have you heard of that car?
I've not seen this particular car, but it is absolutely plausible.
Would you say it would be possible to recreate such a car right now and make it viable to go on the road?
It's the question what the customer demands are. So if you build vehicles that are very narrow, where you lay down your customer to get the air track down, you can go with these demonstration vehicles.
The car that I'm talking about, because of course there's a lot of examples of cars where you have to lay down in bicycle tires and so on. Yeah. This car it's a production car. It was an Opel Caravan from 1959. It was a regular production car that just was modified. Yeah. But it's not it weighs, I think, 1,300 kilos. It's not a very light car.
How far per liter?
159 kilometers per liter, 376 miles.
I cannot comment on this number. I have not seen this. I can give you what is the plausible range.
And what would be the plausible maximum range that you can get out of an internal combustion engine?
It is depending on the size of the vehicle, and what the customer wants to have is much more important than anything else.
When the car industry talks about we need to listen to the consumer, what that means is that they listen to fleet owners because more than half of new cars are not sold to private individuals. They are sold to companies, lease companies, fleet companies. And one characteristic of these people who drive these cars is that they don't pay themselves for the fuel. They never see a fuel bill. They have a tank card, and that's where most new cars end up, with people who don't pay their own fuel bills. So it's no wonder that these people are not interested in fuel-efficient cars if you don't pay your own fuel. And almost the only way of really tackling this is, one, a regulation on fuel efficiency of cars, so that the government says it has to happen. And the second thing that needs to happen is that the business car tax regime needs to be changed in a way that if you drive a lease car, that you feel the fuel efficiency of a car some way or another. If not through your fuel bills, you feel it through the tax system. And the UK sets the best example in this respect. You pay more tax if the lease car that you drive is less fuel efficient, and vice versa. And in the UK it works. UK is the only market in the world that I know of where the business car is more fuel efficient than the private car. Business cars overtaken, since the introduction of this system, the private car. So the average customer that buys new cars is not at all interested in fuel efficiency. And that is a major problem and needs to be tackled through regulation and through taxation.
The car of the future may come to you from Apple or Intel, not necessarily from General Motors, because as we electrify the jalopy, it makes it less relevant what the juice is. What do I mean? The car itself is becoming more software, more electrification in the form of lithium-ion batteries and command and control software, rather than simply the old gears and transmissions and grease of the 100-year-old model of the automobile. And the more electric the automobile becomes, the smarter it becomes, the more it becomes the core competence of Silicon Valley and Bangalore, not so much of Detroit.
De nieuwe autobedrijfjes komen vooral in Silicon Valley snel van de grond. Zoals Fisker, een bedrijfje dat als eerste met een plug-in hybrid op de markt wil komen. Een van de investeerders is Kleiner, Perkins, Caulfield & Byers. Een groepje durf-investeerders, die onder andere als een van de eerste geld stak in de zoekmachine Google.
In Silicon Valley, the startup has always had the advantage of speed because you focus on one problem and you develop the technology with a best-of-breed engineering team. Ray Lane, I'm a managing partner of Kleiner Perkins. Most of the large car companies can't execute very fast. They've got large bureaucracies. They have to make sure that every car they put on the road passes all of the possible tests. Over the longer term, if EVs are a big market, then the OEMs will be there. The question is, can you build a new brand? Can you build a new car company in that gap of time that exists? I mean, General Motors and Ford's market caps now are so low. I mean, you compare, it's frightening to compare them against a number of companies here in Silicon Valley that are only software companies. And so they're so concerned about their shareholders and how to protect their shareholders, that the best way to protect the shareholder is to sell more cars that they can make money on. And so what they do is keep cutting back on expenses, keep cutting back on headcount, keep cutting back on plant capacity. They're making the moves that they think are necessary. They're not thinking about investing for the long term, and electric vehicles will not make a difference to their bottom line for at least 5 years, maybe 8 years. So, that's not how they're going to solve their short-term problems. So it's a result of short-term thinking, quarterly earnings type of thinking. And most big companies do think that way.
En dan is er Tesla. Zij verkopen nu al elektrische auto's en hopen een goed marktaandeel opgebouwd te hebben voordat de grote fabrikanten zich aan de nieuwe omstandigheden hebben aangepast.
The reason I funded Tesla is because I really think it's very important that we accelerate the adoption of electric vehicles. I'm Elon Musk. I'm the chairman and the product architect of the company. And it was not with the idea of just creating a sports car that's very expensive, because that doesn't really change the world. That's not going to make a dent on our energy usage. But the sports car is really just an entry point to the marketplace. And from the sports car, we'll go to Model 2, Model 3, and in each case, with each successive model, we'll increase the production volume and decrease the price. So Model 2 is actually going to be a four-door, five-passenger luxury sports sedan at about half the price of our sports car. So it'll be around maybe the $59,000 range. And when you take into account the fact that it'll probably only cost about $5 to recharge the car and go over 200 miles, so you take the operating cost into account, that's equivalent to a much lower cost gasoline sedan. And then going to Model 3, we want to try to get an electric car that's around the $30,000 price point. So then it's really, many people can afford it at that stage. We're very good at performance. 0 to 60 miles per hour or 0 to 100 kilometers per hour is about 3.9 seconds, which actually understates the true acceleration, because the 0 to 60 is normally measured from the point of clutch engagement to reaching 100 kilometers, but there's no clutch engagement delay because we have no clutch. This got better acceleration than any Aston Martin or any Ferrari currently in production. The Enzo is faster.
So this is like filling it up?
Yeah, this is basically, you just, that's it. It only costs, at current California electricity rates, $4 to recharge the whole car and go 220 miles.
And that's the time between charges, 220 miles?
Yeah.
And how long does it take to recharge it?
It takes about 3.5 hours.
3.5 hours?
Yeah, although we're working on an upgrade that will allow a charge in about an hour.
And it's just a regular electricity that
The charger is built in, so actually all you need is an extension cord. Because you worry, like, what if you go to a friend's place or you go to a cottage somewhere or at a hotel? It's no problem, you just plug it into the wall.
Okay. And how do you start the car?
Well, you don't actually start it, you just turn it on.
You just turn it on? Can you show us?
Sure. That's it.
That's it. Now it's ready to run.
Yeah.
And it's silent.
Yeah. Nothing. companies are not very good at revolutionary innovation. They're okay when it comes to incremental, things here and there, but they have a real problem with, taking the next leap forward. That somebody needs to lead the way. A smaller company needs to lead the way. I mean, why does Google exist? Why didn't Microsoft just completely own that market? Yeah. Why does Google continue to gain market share? I mean, how do any of these startups really come into being? Also, if you think about what's special about an electric car, it's things like the batteries, the electric motor, the power electronics, the software to manage all of that stuff. And you know what? I mean, those skills are present in Silicon Valley to a greater degree than anywhere else in the world.
All right, are you holding on?
Yeah, I'm holding on.
This is a hydrogen-powered car with a fuel cell. You have a very impressive acceleration when you launch the vehicle. It's not tapping into the fossil fuel. It taps into hydrogen as an energy carrier. And we use a fuel cell, which is a technology where you convert the hydrogen and oxygen out of the air into water and, very important for us, into electricity to drive the vehicle. Looking at the technology, that is a new technology. And you always start with the first demonstration vehicles. And the next step, which is the very important one, is to get them in customer hands.
Hydrogen as a storage mechanism is a terrible storage mechanism. It's extremely energy inefficient to create hydrogen, and then it is a lousy means of storing energy. First of all, hydrogen is not naturally occurring, okay? Not on Earth anyway. So you have to get the hydrogen from somewhere. So you say, where are you going to get the hydrogen? Well, you can take natural gas, which is CH4, chop the carbon off, and have your hydrogen. But then you're just using natural gas. Or you could say, well, let's split water with electrolysis. That's very inefficient. You generate an enormous amount of heat when you do that. So then after you split the water, you've got to separate out the hydrogen and oxygen. You've got to take the hydrogen, you've got to pressurize the hydrogen or liquefy it, which also takes a lot of energy. That whole cycle is extremely energy inefficient. It's much better, rather than applying electricity to split the water, to charge a battery pack. It's like 3 or 4 times more efficient. So it's lousy as an energy storage mechanism, and it's lousy from the standpoint of creating it. It's energy inefficient. It's just bad on it. And then there's no bloody distribution infrastructure. Now you compare that to electricity.
Just before summer 2008, the European Commission announced a new partnership with, let's say, the hydrogen industry, of which the car industry is an important partner, to throw many hundreds of millions of subsidies again at hydrogen as a fuel. That's one example of the subsidies that the industry is enjoying. Unfortunately, we are seeing much less action in the field of, let's say, hybridization, the move to plug-in hybrids, and also the move to electric cars, because I think most analysts in the industry, and we also agree that the transition to electricity holds much more promise than the transition to hydrogen.
IKEA is using this vehicle for doing standard jobs. It is in customer hands, and we get the feedback from this cooperation.
Is there a date set for production of these vehicles so that I can buy one in a dealership?
We don't talk about introduction dates right now. We are working on being fast to the market, and it is something where the infrastructure and the development, the production development of the fuel cell powered vehicle has to go on.
But no specific date for a hydrogen vehicle?
No specific date, and it is something that we are absolutely convinced this will come for sure. But we are not ready to announce a production date of a vehicle right now.
But is there sort of like an idea that it will happen in, say, 5 years or 10 years or 20 years or?
Don't talk about a production date right now.
Well, if one were to be cynical about it, you'd say they don't really have an answer, so they have to pick a technology that's always 10 years away, and that allows them to, for the critics, say, what are you doing about the future? Oh, we're working on hydrogen. It's 10 years away, and except that every year it's always 10 years away because it'll never succeed in any kind of production situation.
All right, guys. Yep, we're ready. It has to be finished before September of 2009, and it will be. We've had a few stumbling blocks. Like I said, financing is one, but it will be done. Oh. All right.
I've enjoyed driving my internal combustion engine. I've enjoyed working on them. I've enjoyed the romance of them. We need to move away from that. It's that time.
I want to take it for a ride.
Before I got my car in September of last year, I was driving a 4x4 V8 pickup truck at a 22-gallon gas tank, and it was getting maybe 12 miles a gallon in town. There's no way I could afford to fill that up now.
All right, let's go, guys.
We've seen automotive companies go out of business, and they change because they have to or they die. And some of them choose to die.
All right, we do have a steering wheel. Woo! Anything that is unable to evolve becomes extinct. I think the dinosaurs are on their way out. That's just like a real car. Woo! Yeah! I bet this gets a lot of miles to the gallon.
This is the great question. Will the solutions come in time? And when we talk about in time, climate change is the great potential irreversible disaster. And there are looming smaller disasters that might involve geopolitics in the Middle East. And the answer is we don't know. It's a great race. On the one hand, development and continued consumption of resources, more cars, are creating problems. On the other hand, our innovative capacity and our use of smart public policy and the rising public awareness and consciousness is helping create solutions. Will we solve these problems in time? I hope so. I'm an optimist. I'm arguing and making the case for us to improve one half of the race so that the solutions outpace the problems. But anybody who tells you they know the answer for sure, I wouldn't trust them. The reality is, it's up to us. It's up to each one of us and the choices we make to make sure that we solve these problems.